What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I want to talk about Disney Lorcana. I want to talk about Disney Lorcana in Japan, in Japanese. You see, Twitter the other day decided to recommend a Twitter handle for me. It was the official Disney Lorcana Japanese handle. Well, joke's on them. I already knew the game was coming in Japanese. I'd already seen some of the information, but I think we need to talk about it because one of the things which I think people are sleeping on here is this is absolutely crucial and vital for Disney Lorcana being a proper worldwide sensation as a card game. It is incredibly important. To put it very simply, Disney Lorcana cannot be one of the world's biggest card games without having a Japanese presence. It just can't. If we look at the biggest card games in the world right now, we've obviously got the Pokemon TCG as number one. Now, I gotta tell you, it's really hard to measure, like, worldwide what the biggest card game is, but we know it's Pokemon. Like, after Pokemon, it gets a bit awkward, but number one, we know is Pokemon, and it's not even that close. And I know every time I say this, people think, well, you know, no. It is not even close. The number one card game in the world, by a gigantic margin, is the Pokemon trading card game. And however big a margin you think it's got, my experience is most people just do not realize quite how much bigger than every other card game Pokemon is. It's the biggest one in Japan by a big margin. It's the biggest one in the West by a big margin. It's Pokemon. After that, it gets a little bit funny. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is probably number 2 by now. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the third biggest card game in the West. And honestly, it seems at times a little bit vulnerable. Like, for instance, that time Keyforge started briefly outselling it in hobby stores. Not in the mass market and not overall, but in hobby stores, there was a point where Keyforge was actually outselling Yu-Gi-Oh! Which was weird and didn't last very long. But it did happen for a period of time. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Is also entrenched very clearly as the number 2 card game in Japan. So you put that all together, Yu-Gi-Oh's probably number 2. And I'm actually going to go out on a limb, and I cannot prove this yet, alright? Just to be clear, I cannot prove this, but I think that the number 3 card game worldwide right now is actually the One Piece trading card game. Now, last time on this channel, I showed you figures of card game sales in Japan. One Piece was number 4, but it was right behind Duel Masters and looked poised to overtake it. Duel Masters was falling very slightly and One Piece was growing at an absurd rate. So One Piece is probably number 3 by them. And it's probably number 4 in the West. We haven't got good figures, or at least I've not seen any. But I do think it's fair to say that that is the most likely third biggest one right now. I know a lot of you are thinking about Magic the Gathering, and I see where you're coming from, but Magic the Gathering is actually number 6 over in Japan. Significantly below Weiss Schwarz, which is number 5, and, you know, it's just over a third of Weiss Schwarz, but it's less than 20% of One Piece. So Magic, it's a thing in Japan, don't get me wrong, but it is significantly behind a lot of the others. The thing you'll see here across all of these games is that they all have a strong Japanese presence. Of the top card games, it is only really Magic that isn't a smash in Japan, but that's because it's so big in the West, still second to Pokemon, and yes, there's a big margin, but it kind of exists on that. That is how it stays a big worldwide game. It is basically huge in the West, relevant in Japan, and you add those two together and you end up with a big TCG. There's no such thing as a big worldwide card game which doesn't have a Japanese presence. You'll notice Flesh and Blood. Now, Flesh and Blood is not the biggest card game out there, but it's a great card game. Flesh and Blood essentially is the really competitive card game, I think is probably the way to put it, and it has carved out a really nice niche in that regard. Yeah, they've started moving into Japan as well. But of course they have. Because Flesh and Blood have realised that you cannot have a big card game worldwide without being big in Japan. And for the record, if you've never been to Japan, highly recommend it. Japan treats card games differently to how we do. There are more card games in Japan. There are more card stores in Japan. Card games are just a bigger deal in Japan than they are in the rest of the world. And if you go to Japan, look up online before you go. Find a bunch of little card stores, because I assure you, trawling card stores in Japan is about one of the most fun things in the entire world. No, I'm not joking, but I am biased given what I do. So back to Lorcana then. What has Lorcana started doing? Well, they're planning a launch for over in Japan. Now, it is actually scheduled for release in January 2025. There is, like I say, an official Twitter account, and all they say at the moment is scheduled for release in January 2025. And they are starting from the first chapter. So if you have a look at this image here from the Tokyo Toy Show, you will notice that it is all the first chapter. That is what they're worried about. Here is a promo image showing the things they are releasing, and oh look, we've got first chapter sleeves, first chapter playmats, first chapter starter decks, and first chapter boxes. There should be something that stands out to you here, and that is they're the same. Look at the starter decks. Look at the packaging. It is the same. Now, it's not exactly the same. There is one difference which we honestly should see coming that we're going to see with this card game, and that is smaller, cheaper packs. Fewer cards per pack, cheaper packs overall. This is a cultural thing. This happens in Japan. When the Digimon card game launched in Japan, I told everyone that yes, I know they've got smaller, cheaper packs. That's not going to be the case over here. Everyone called me an idiot, and it turns out we have standard size booster packs at the standard price like every other card game. And then when One Piece launched over in Japan, they had smaller, cheaper packs. And I said, yeah, but that's not going to be the case in the West. And everyone called me an idiot. And then, of course, they launched in the West with regular-sized booster packs at a regular price. It is a cultural thing. It happened with almost every card game. Yes, there are exceptions. We have bigger, more expensive booster packs. Japan have smaller, cheaper booster packs. That is just the way Japan does card games. Has been for a very, 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 very long time. Don't expect this to impact us in the least. If you go to Japan, you're going to have smaller booster packs. They're going to be a bit cheaper. If you're over here, nothing is going to change. So, yeah, don't worry about it, ladies and gentlemen. We're cool. We're fine. It's all good. And we were given a bunch of information about the Japanese version of the game, and there is a bunch of it over on Twitter. There's nothing you really need to know like that. Here's a nice little collage of some cards you will remember from the first chapter. But, you know, now they're all in Japanese. And here's a look at the Mickey Mouse promo, which was given out at the Tokyo Toy Show. Which is cool. It's a fun card. It's got a little promo thing on it, which is nice. Exactly the same as promos do over here. It's not mechanically unique. It's just got the little promo symbol in the bottom middle of the card, which is nice. One thing that is interesting, all the cards are fully in Japanese, except song names. Now, to be fair, you'll notice on Let It Go here, it does say Let It Go in katakana directly above it. Doesn't really matter, but it's just kind of interesting that it's there. But otherwise, the cards are entirely, all apart from, the illustration names, obviously. But, the cards are fully in Japanese, except for song names. I just thought that was a bit interesting. I believe the only one they've tweeted out so far is Let It Go, but there were some others shown off in very low quality images from the toy show, which showed you a similar kind of thing. And it's interesting to note, of course, that some of the verbiage is going to be a little bit different on the cards. Doesn't really matter, but you'll see that some of the keywords, etc., are a little bit different. So, evasive here we can see on Mickey Mouse Bray's Little Tailor. It's got the kanji for times, as in the amount of times something happens, and dodge. So, times dodge, it translates as kaihi, which is avoid. So, and again, it's really awkward to try and take Japanese phrases and say, this is exactly what it is in English, but it's basically avoid rather than evasive, which is basically the same thing, but it's still kind of, I mean, for me at least, it's very interesting to see exactly how they translated it. Point is, you're going to see little differences like that. That's it. I love this. I collect mostly Japanese Pokemon cards. I am learning Japanese. And I intend to build a Japanese Lorcana collection. Now, it depends on how easy it's going to be to import these cards. If they are very readily available, I can just go on places like Amazon Japan and some online card shops I know, pick them up, job will be a good one. If there is a fever, and it might be Disney's quite big in Japan, that might scupper my plans a little bit. Although, if you want first chapter cards, they're getting harder and harder to find in English, maybe Japanese is the way to go. But the fact that Lorcana is launching in Japanese is a very, very big deal. And you might be thinking, wassy, right? They're going to be doing set 1. We're already in spoiler season for set 6. Well, some cards in set 6 have been shown off anyway. We're playing in the set 5 meta. Obviously, we know Japan's going to catch up. I don't think they've released a cadence or anything along those lines. Let me know in the comment section if I'm wrong about this. But, yeah, they're going to catch... Obviously, they're going to catch up. Come on. Of course they're going to catch up. That's not the point. The reason you should all care about this is the fact that we are going to be seeing Disney Lorcana, hopefully, becoming much bigger, much more of a deal, and that is going to help fans of Disney Lorcana everywhere. Essentially, this is Ravensburger's way of saying, let's make this a truly global game that persists and becomes one of the big games over the course of many years. That is why launching it in Japan is a big deal. Other European languages, it's cool seeing Lorcana, don't get me wrong. Seeing it expand into other territories is obviously awesome, but having your card game launching in Japan is a bigger deal than any other territory because Japan is really where card games thrive and is going to have a lot of competition, but I don't think it's going to necessarily be a big issue. I do think Lorcana has got what it takes to be huge, and as someone who adores Disney Lorcana, I just think this is wonderful. And I love it. Big question for me, of course. Weiss Schwarz, I told you they're one of the top 5 card games in Japan. They have been doing some very interesting Disney sets. And I do think we might be seeing that less now. I don't know what the license is, and anyone that's saying they do, they don't. Because frankly, how would they? Come on. Nobody knows that, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody knows that. Anyone that knows about the licensing agreement Weiss Schwarz had with Disney is under NDA and they ain't talking. But now that Disney Lorcana is launching in Japan and it's launching in January, could it be that Weiss Schwarz did have the license, but it expired at the end of the year? Maybe. Could Disney have just granted a non-exclusive license, so what Weiss Schwarz does doesn't impact Ravensburger? Maybe. And we'll honestly probably never know which one of those it was. Could it have been an individual license granted for each individual set and Disney are just going to stop granting them now? Maybe. I don't know. But the point is, the Weiss Schwarz Disney stuff in Japan, that was nice, and to be fair, from everything I can see, sold incredibly well. But I do think Disney Lorcana is going to be so much bigger than the Weiss Schwarz Disney sets ever were. Could be wrong. But I have a thought, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm very, very excited. But I've told you everything you need to know, so now it's over to you guys. Are you going to be picking up any Japanese Lorcana? Is this something you're excited about? Or are you just looking from the sidelines going, oh, that's pretty cool, I'm going to go back and play with my English cards now? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy. That's where we talk about Disney Lorcana and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching Wassy Plays.